Yeah, I know, right? Trust me, it gets even weirder. I used a Fino Girana sherry. Hello and welcome to episode 220 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. It's Saturday the 1st of June. I think officially it's the first day of summer here in the UK. And I hope you've had a good week, especially if, like us, you've enjoyed a holiday weekend and you're staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I am a CMO. And in a moment, you'll hear from my experienced marketing chums, Jeff Clark and Robert Rose, as we share marketing street knowledge to inspire your inner rock star. This week, Jeff and I have some fun with ChatGPT, asking the questions about product adoption. And Robert is in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar with a cocktail and an interesting thought about the future of search. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
Right, let's get started with Jeff Clark, our resident strategist and former research director at Forrester in the Rockstar CMO Marketing Studio.
Hello, Ian. Welcome back to the Rockstar CMO studio. Come on in.
Studio. Thank you, man. Nice to see you.
I'm trying to be like the DJ. Studio.
Yeah. I was thinking of, what's that drummer? Phil Collins. I was thinking, it's just a studio from Phil Collins. But yes, we are in the studio. And we're going to, let's start off with the fact that I already know you're having some lovely weather there.
We're having very lovely weather. It is almost June, and it's feeling like June, and beautiful sunny day. So, yes, we're celebrating that here.
So as I think the regular listeners, if you listened to last week's show, it was a lovely day for Jeff that day as well. And you can hear the birds tweeting in the background, which I didn't edit out, so it was still all there. And then just earlier, I could hear the cicadas.
I'm not sure what it was, but there's...
but anyway,
yeah.
I thought...
Insects are buzzing.
Yeah, and I think... Hopefully the listener knows that sort of warm American summer sound. I think of it as anyway. We don't got that in Oxfordshire in the UK.
Not until July or August.
No, well, we've had a very changeable couple of days, and I've spent a couple of days actually in Oxford, staying in a hotel down there with my family just to have a little mini break. It's not that far away from me, and. Every time we stepped foot outside, it rained. Well, actually, that's not true because we were quite lucky. Every time we stepped inside somewhere, it rained, but we did get wet a couple of times. So we've had a very dodgy week this week, very dodgy week, but very pleasant. And I'm slightly croaky from all the fun that we had. So I'd call a cold or something like that. So that's the weather. Jolly good. Well done, us. And how's your week been in general? Anyway,
Jeff. Very good. Busy. And, as you know, I've been striking out as part of a band. So not just trying to do Rockstar on a marketing studio, but actually being, maybe not a rock star, but using my musical skills.
Well, you're the only one here that can play an instrument. In fact, you have played your guitar on the podcast before.
I did maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah. You would have to be a dedicated listener to have heard that. So that's probably one for just for a couple of people we know. All right. So this week, let's get on to the topic of marketing. This week, we decided to do something slightly different. I did allude to it last week when I was doing the readout. We're going to talk about product adoption strategies. And we thought, we normally do our 5 effing things on these topics, don't we, Jeff? And we thought, well, what are going to be the 5 most common questions asked? And we thought, why don't we ask ChatGPT? Rather than ask ChatGPT for the answers, like everybody else does, like we all do all the time, we thought we'll ask ChatGPT for the questions, and then we'll give the human answers, the answers
and
of
then
past.
And then ChatGPT can scrape it off the podcast and have a decent answer.
Yeah. Well, an answer at least. That's not like too many promises. But I also thought, we thought it would be a bit of fun, as we don't have any friends. We thought we'd use ChatGPT. And with the way we wanted to set this up is that if you can imagine that me and Jeff are sitting on a panel and ChatGPT is hosting this panel, and and ChatGPT will ask us questions as if we were on a panel. That was the prompt I gave ChatGPT. And what actually a serious side to this is I was actually thinking that if we find a topic and then you ask ChatGPT what the 5 things about that topic, they are probably, oops, I'm going to drop my microphone. They are probably the 5 most mundane, boring, regular things that everybody asks, right? So these should be the top 5 questions that most people are talking about or writing about or thinking about in terms of product adoption. So they might be quite relevant. I don't know. Did that make any sense, Jeff?
Yes, it did. It did.
Oh, so during the week, I did do some research into how I might get ChatGPT to actually ask these questions of us in the podcast. That hasn't gone terribly well from a technical perspective. I use Squadcast, and Squadcast doesn't have the capability to do quite the things we wanted to do. So I need some tech, which I don't got. So we're going to do it very, very basically. I've got ChatGPT on the app on my phone. And so I'm going to press play and it will read out the answer to the prompts that we gave it, right? Do you think I'm explaining this very well?
So, yeah, good. I'd say let's see what she sounds
all right.
He or she sounds like.
All right. So just for the prompt wizards out there, the prompt I gave to ChatGPT is, what questions should I ask a panel of marketing experts about product adoption in B2B? Okay. So this was the response.
When speaking with a panel of marketing experts about product adoption in B2B, it's important to ask questions that will yield actionable insights and strategic guidance. These questions are designed to extract practical, real-world advice and innovative strategies from the panel, helping you to improve product adoption in your B2B context. 1. What are the most innovative strategies you've seen or implemented for driving product adoption in the B2B market? This question aims to uncover cutting-edge and effective approaches that have been successful in the B2B landscape.
Well, one of the things that the chat person had mentioned was cutting edge. And so for me, I'd have to say this was a bit of a tough one, because I was thinking about, like in B2B, I was thinking, probably the best strategy that I experienced or implemented was when I was working for a company that had a really focused target account strategy. Mm-hmm. So it's all about customer intimacy, kind of by, and I hate to use the term, but brute force. So rather than a formal process or cutting edge, strategy, mm-hmm. It was really about surrounding the accounts and looking at all the touch points and then coordinating it. And, the account manager, might be the ringleader, but in a lot of cases, it was just the fact that we knew who the accounts were. Mm-hmm. And, from the CEO down to the account manager was all about understanding what are we going to be doing with this set of accounts. And for, at that time, a $500 million company, that's a pretty tall order. But we did support it with data, and we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but we support it with data because we used a data warehouse to pull all together all of the interactions that happened, either virtual or personal, that were captured in the CRM system. Mm-hmm. And later on, they actually kind of built it into the CRM system to create like the proverbial 360-degree view of the customer. But so that made it so that anybody from a services, sales, marketing perspective kind of knew where the account stood for making any next actions. And we didn't do a lot of broad brush marketing communications. A lot of it was just really targeted.
Oh, okay. So the innovative strategy there would be to be very focused around your target accounts. But that's presumably for a bigger ticket item, isn't it, in the B2B software world?
Bigger ticket item.
Whereas what I was thinking about, just to counter that, was I think what I've seen is some really good strategies that work your way around the gatekeepers. So I think we've talked about on this podcast before about sort of personas and who everybody is involved in the buying process. And there's a lot of research about how many people are now involved in the B2B buying process. But if you can get in there with a community, a bit like the way perhaps Slack has infiltrated our enterprises, right? I'm not sure that anybody thought, oh, I need a Slack. You know what I mean? At an enterprise level, they thought...
Maybe a pair of Slacks.
Yeah, at an enterprise level. So I think that made it in because they created a community and it had sufficient features that made it useful. There was a freemium element to it. And then that sort of Trojan horsed itself into our organizations. And I think if you can think about, and that's a combination of sales and marketing and product strategy, isn't it? Because to offer a freemium, it's a very, very fine balance of encouraging adoption because it's free. That's the best way of encouraging adoption and making a profit. You can't give away the good stuff, right? It needs to lead on. So it's a very tricky one to pull off. But I think that strategy of kind of freemium and Trojan horsing yourself into an enterprise, I think that's a great one. So that's one I would give.
And I totally agree because I think there's a lot of SaaS-based services like Slack or Box or Dropbox or whatever that do, they as you said, they sort of establish themselves, either starting freemium or low cost option. And then it's a matter for the sales and the marketing team. Well, actually, a lot of the early interaction, which one of the things I was thinking about is automated. So it's like, okay, you signed up. Now here's an email about resources. Here's a webcast coming up. Here's, and so you're all of those enablement tools that are helpful for any customer, can be, a lot of the prompts to that can be automated. And then it's up to, an enterprise or a sales team to be able to say, look, we've got, we got 100 licenses at ABC company. Let's see if we can become the standard, or let's see if we can grow it into, a process management application as opposed to just communicating on Slack.
Well, absolutely. And the balance there is that I'm saying every and all, and that's a bit of a sweeping generalization. There are many, I think, SaaS-based organizations that have made the choice that they've started that route with their core community, and then they thought, I want to go enterprise, and then they leave behind that community. They lose that scrappy sort of way that they started, and they lose their core audience of either developers or something like that because they then try and pitch it to the CMO. So that's a difficult strategy too, isn't it? To get that right of crossing that Rubicon.
Crossing the Rubicon, yes.
All right. So
thank you, Caesar, for coming up with for doing something that we've been talking about for 2 centuries or 2 millennia.
Well, the nice thing about having somebody who's looking after us in this, what do you call them? Moderating this session, being that they're a robot and only switch onable when I switch them on, is that we just run on for every question. If this was a genuine panel, we'd have been told. Anyway, I'm going to press play.
2. How can we best leverage data and analytics to understand and enhance our product adoption efforts? Understanding how to use data effectively can help tailor strategies to target the right audience and measure success accurately.
Boom. So yeah, this is, and I kind of hinted to this before, but this is where, marketing has to dig into the post-sale experience. So, what are the stages from sales to onboarding, adoption, value realization, loyalty? And by the way, we did do a great episode on customer life cycles, of which the Pedowitz group had provided those definitions, and that might have been a couple years ago. But for, as we were talking about, for SaaS and some other software offerings, it's typically easier to track that because your product can feed you data. So in product, marketing or in product data that can come into your data lake or whatever you're using to your customer data platform. And so, this becomes the treasure trove of understanding where people are on this latter part of the cycle, the post-sales cycle, and you can kind of think of it like a demand generation funnel, but it's on the other side. Right. And what are you able to do to make sure you're converting people to adoption and obviously eventually to advocacy? And so, and if you don't, have some of those tools, then there are a lot of companies that rely on surveys, support experiences, feedback mechanisms like Net Promoter Scores. Mm-hmm. But again, you want to be able to aggregate that information in a way that everybody from, sales, marketing, et cetera, and the support services or professional services can actually use this, again, to get that idea. Where is the customer in the cycle, and what do we need to do if we see that there's a drop-off between purchase and onboarding or onboarding to adoption? What do we need to do to fix that? Mm. And that's just like a demand cycle. It's like if we see people dropping off from lead to opportunity, how do we fix that?
Yes, I can see our robot moderator tutting and looking at their watch. We need to crack on. No, my one here is I agree with you. I'm just going to have a quick take on this particular one. I think that we neglect as SaaS, particularly in B2B SaaS products, the world has moved on now, right? And I think we neglect sometimes how much data we capture within those products about how, and I know you touched on it too, about how our customer is using the tool. But two sides to that. One is it can be used as a research tool to contribute to insights to the community. So, I've worked with an email service provider, and they had a whole load of data from thousands and billions of emails about what emails performed well, what emails didn't perform well, what happened differently in different markets and all that stuff. And sharing that with your community is massive. Now, what's that got to do with product adoption? Well, because they then trust you, right? And so you're going to become a trusted part of their day, right? So and so it's all good marketing, and that's also how we do adoption. But also, I think the actual mechanics of how somebody uses the product. So us marketers, we look at our website and we use things like heat maps and mouse tracking and all that stuff. You can do all of that in the product as well. So you can see what are the features people are using, what are they neglecting, why is it they're going about doing something in a certain way with your product when maybe it could have been quicker and maybe you could help them with that. So I think there's all this data in the product. I think that's the data that we need to try and adopt to improve product adoption. Okay. All right.
Yes.
So now, so number 3.
3. What role do personalized customer experiences play in product adoption, and how can we implement them at scale? Personalization can significantly impact adoption rates, and learning how to execute this efficiently is crucial.
So, this is a hot topic for us, isn't it? Previously, Jeff. Personalization.
Yeah. Personalization. And so I think that, as we've talked about it in past episodes, the personalization on a pre-sales experience can be hard, error-prone, to the data or what the expectations of the prospect are. But, once you sold the customer, and we've talked about collecting the data about what they're doing and their pace on adoption, is you better start engaging with them as if, like them. And they've opted into talking with you, so to speak. So let's talk to them. And this is where, as I think it's been said for many years that the consumer brands like the Amazons, the Apples have excelled in this area. So they set a high bar of expectation that, just because you're a B2B brand doesn't mean you shouldn't be trying to reach that level of expectation. So, this is where your customer data resource, the data lake or CDP, needs to be able to track the nature of the relationship, status of the customer support service, provide updates to the apps that the teams engage with. So, whether it's marketing, what's your exposure to the data in the CRM, certainly services and sales would be the same thing, is that you need to have that access so that you, when you're dealing with a customer, and obviously there's two different types of interactions. There's the automated interactions of which you want to be able to trigger. And then there are the more personal interactions, which you just need to have people, sales, service, et cetera, informed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that throughout this little panel discussion is the questions are covering both existing users, which is some of what I've been more thinking about in terms of them using the product more and staying sticky and not churning. And then there's also the product adoption of getting new users, which I think is what you focused on there, right? In terms of what we can do as marketers to improve adoption within our customers. And I agree with you about, some caution needed when personalizing. But back to what I was just talking about the data that's locked into our product. I think if you personalize the way that the product works for you, I think is an interesting thing. If we're going to talk about personalization and customer experience, well, maybe it's personalization and user experience. And I'm not sure in all the products I use anyway, there's enough thought to the fact that, this guy does or gal does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step every time they log in, or they spend most of their time in the campaign module, not in the CRM module, or whatever it is. Yep. And I think that it wouldn't be that hard for these kind of platforms to use that data about how we're using the product and where we spend a lot of our time, and then offer those services a bit more easier than us having to find them again in the menus. It's sort of like other people that do this task also do this task, if you think about the Amazon kind of example. So I think that's where personalization could be used for user adoption, because I think if you get somebody using your product in a more deep way, they're more sticky, less prone to churn, you're more part of their day. So that's mine for you there. Okay, so excellent. Turning to our robot moderator. Number 4.
4. How important is aligning sales and marketing teams in driving product adoption? And what are the best practices for achieving this alignment? Collaboration between sales and marketing is vital for a seamless adoption process, and this question seeks practical tips for fostering such alignment.
Well, I think, I think one of the things maybe ChatGPT missed out on this is it's not just sales and marketing, because again, in the post-sale experience, adoption is going to be relying on working with, professional services, support, in development platforms, there's development, there's teams that run those portals, et cetera, enablement teams. So there's actually a lot of people that need to be aligned and collaborating, on this post-sale experience. And so, one is that I think it's important caveat when you go back to sales is that do we have sales team that's managing the existing accounts, or are they just focused on booking new deals and going on? Because if they're focused on booking new deals and going on, then they're not really going to be a partner with you in driving adoption, at least until it gets to the point where they're ready to buy again, which is, could be, years down the road. Mm-hmm. And then it might be up to a different account manager. So they might be, I don't really care about that right now because I'm on to, the next guy.
Yeah.
And two, the partners, again, as I said, customer service, support, professional services also need to have access to the information and the tools that they're going to use to understand, as you were talking about, how are people using the products and what are our goals to get them for better value realization, which actually a term we didn't use yet, but beyond adopting the product is to say they've realized the value, in a step before becoming a real advocate and be able to use for referrals. So, so I think that there's the teams that we're talking about, customer service, support, professional service. I mean, they're good sources for anecdotal information about what issues they may be running to customers. But again, their business systems that they use are, valuable data for that infamous 360-degree view of the customer.
Yes. Yeah, I think the set of questions, I would challenge these questions, I think. I don't know if our robot overseer was sitting in front of us in a panel discussion, I'd be quite so bold. But I think I agree with you, because I don't think product adoption is necessarily just about sales and marketing. It's we need our customer success, service and support people involved in something like this. As a marketing team, particularly as a content marketing team, as you say, you want to know the questions that are often asked, so that you can provide sort of how-to content, how-to videos, and we can actually add some of this stuff into our content marketing, because these days that bleeds, throughout the customer journey as people are interested in this before they buy as well, right? It's how does it work? How's it going to integrate with this? How's that going to work? And so all of this is great content for us. And I think this is also where you're saying, okay, if it's sales and marketing and the sales guy is only compensated on new deals, he's not going to give monkeys, and he moves on, as you say, right? And if marketing, similarly, just to put us in the same boat, is if we're only motivated by new logos, or we're only motivated by growing our thing and not farming, then that's a challenge too. So I think there's a conversation here that maybe we should have in another podcast about the champion of the customer internally, which can be the CMO, or it can be a chief customer officer or somebody like that. I think that's where this all needs to come together, doesn't it? That you need to have somebody who gives a fuck about the customer, who's pulling this all together and then making sure that they're engaged and sticky as well, right?
I mean, that is one of the examples I mentioned before. The CEO was so interested in what was going on with, the 100, 200, 300 customers that we were really focused on. And it's like, you wanted to make sure that if he said, what's going on in this bank? you knew. You knew. Yeah. Or so you could get the data.
Yeah. And also to flip that on, the last point there really is that customers are such a great marketing asset. Why wouldn't you spend a lot of time focused on investing in their success? Yeah. All right. So turning back to our ChatGPT moderator, question 5.
Can you share examples of successful customer onboarding programs that have significantly improved product adoption rates? Effective onboarding can make or break product adoption, and real-world examples can provide valuable insights into best practices.
So, and this is, as we put in the notes, this is kind of similar to number 1, but it is focused specifically on onboarding. And so one of the things that came to my mind when we read this question was that, there was a company I worked at that had a software development platform for independent software vendors. And I've certainly seen, it's just because I've worked at a number of companies where sort of a partner channel was really important. And so I've seen where it's like people do a good job. And I think at the company I referred to, we did a good job of saying, okay, we've sold you a license to develop something. And we're going to make sure that you're now trained. So the enablement is there. Once you purchase the software development kit now, what's the next step in terms of getting you up to speed? And if it's a new version, how are we, bringing you up to speed on the new version? And then you can start to see how the deployment of any applications or any final products based on what you've given them are. And so you can create that onboarding experience that goes from, purchase the product to they're enabled on the product, they've been trained, and now they're actually, now they're actually selling based on the tools we gave them. And now we can start tracking the revenue because we could say, well, they've deployed something, but it's not taking. Well, let's go back and see if we've missed something in that onboarding experience. And, and again, in this case, when you're working the partner channel, then typically there's a partner management team that is like totally focused on making sure that the partner is successful in developing their product with the tools you've given them.
Okay, so you're introducing another group of folks there with the partners as well. So and I've had similar sort of experience. So I've worked with vendors who saw significant improvements in churn when they have a high level of onboarding adoption. So they could correlate between the customers that invest in onboarding and you can get them to go through onboarding and their likelihood to churn and their adoption of the products, to use the term that we're using here. But that can put commercial pressure on sales and to marketing to encourage customers to enter the onboarding process. That might be good pressure that you need to do that. And actually, I see that as an experience of SaaS products that I use. They're really, there's all these things that are trying to encourage you to learn about the product or dig deeper. And here's a walkthrough of this. So I think that stuff is really important.
And the message, we haven't seen you, Ian, in a long time.
Yeah.
Get back in there.
Yeah. And also back to the stuff we were talking about earlier on, which is that the data that we have in the product that shows how people are using it and which features they're not using, and perhaps personalizing that virtual onboarding experience, aside from encouraging people to actually do onboarding, because everybody learns in different ways, was what I was thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am going to hit my head against your tool for a while until until I actually have to speak to somebody, I'm not going to speak to somebody on that first thing, right? And I'm going to
hopefully the product can pick up the head knocks. We gotta call this guy.
Yeah, and I'm going to start with the self-help. I'm going to start with the chat. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to anybody, right? And that's just my way of learning. Whereas other people want to talk to somebody immediately and they want to be stepped through this. And they're visual learners and blah, blah, blah. So I think you've got to have a bunch of different ways that people can get onboarded on your product. And it's not always attend this onboarding session. It's how do we design the product so that people get sucked in and use it in a bit more deeper way, I'd say. All right, so those were our 5 questions that we got. And I shall, I think this has to be turned into a blog post because to make sense of it all. And so... and what I should be doing now is I should be having ChatGPT thank us for our time on the panel.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Ask the audience if they have any questions. But we've run out of time.
And you could ask ChatGPT to write. You could throw them the transcript and say, "Here, write a blog."
I actually think this is quite. I mean, I don't know how everybody uses ChatGPT, but I think it's quite a good thing to ask it the questions because then you know the questions that it.
I think we were surprised that the questions were, even though we had, I think, a slight issue with one of them, were actually pretty on target.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so it leads us to play out with a tune, and to be honest with you, we had a short list of 2, and I've forgotten which one we actually decided to go for.
I think we decided to go with "More Than You Know" by Prince Paul and De La Soul. Yeah. They say, I like it. I love it. More than you know it.
Yeah.
Want some more. And that's where you want your customer to be.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jeff. I shall try and sort out all the technical difficulties if we do this again.
We may not be doing it next week.
But will you let me back in the studio with my ChatGPT phone?
Yes. Bring your phone.
Thanks, man. I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Now I'm coming down out of the clouds and I'm running in a turbulence.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was a little bit of More Than You Know by Prince Paul and De La Soul. And maybe you'd like the job of asking the questions. If so, get in touch. You know where to find us at rockstarcmo.com. Right, it's that time of the week to retire to the Rockstar CMO virtual bar for a cocktail and a chat with my chum, Robert Rose, Chief Troublemaker at the Content Advisory.
Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend, and welcome to the bar. It has been, what a weird week. I mean, I know it's not been a short week for you because you live in a, well, I'm sure there was some banker's holiday or something like that.
Exactly.
That you have. Yeah. I mean, I should have watched my words more carefully there because lest I forget, every week has some sort of banker's holiday in the UK. But yes, we had a short week here. And it felt like a very, very smushed week, yes. Indeed. Although there's a lot of news to talk about for sure. But in any event, so it's been, even though it's been a 4-day week for us here in the U.S., and I'm sure a 2.5 or 3 day week there in the UK, it's no doubt been. It's felt like a very busy week. So we have a fancy cocktail to kick us off into the weekend here, which is called a Vixen. And yeah, this is a really interesting one. I heard about this and tried to make it the last week on my own, and it's good. It's really good. It's definitely going to be one of those drinks that you either love or hate. And so here's the way it works. It's a tequila drink, so you start with your favorite reposado, that which you use for cocktails, mixed cocktails. So, in other words, not necessarily one of your more expensive reposados, but nonetheless, a reposado tequila, 1.5 parts of that to 1 part of sherry. Now, I know, right? Trust me, it gets even weirder. I used a Fino Girana sherry, which is a sweeter sherry, but pick your sherry, and then a 3/4 part of champagne. Now, it's better if the champagne isn't really bubbly, so you can let it, you can do a couple of things to take the bubbles out of the champagne. You can put a little sugar in there. You can, there's a number of things you can do. Just let it sit for a while so that the champagne ultimately is a little bit more like a sweet syrup than anything else, but it's champagne. And then a little lemon, a little squeeze of lemon there. So they call this a Vixen. And I tried it, and I mean, it's got a kick to it. I mean, it's a very sweet kick. I'll say that, but as you might expect.
Yeah.
And so, but basically you do that and you have what is called a Vixen. Now, there's sometimes the recipe, if you want to get really fancy, you take that champagne and you turn it into a syrup by boiling it and putting sugar in it and all that stuff, and you can actually make a very flavorful syrup out of that. But this, I ain't nobody got time for that. So I'm just basically letting the champagne sit for a minute so that it takes some of the bubbles out, and then you put that over ice, and you have yourself a Vixen.
Very nice. Very nice. I've never come across that before. And what a combination of ingredients.
It's a weird one, I tell you. But it's not, I liked it. I don't know that I loved it, but I liked it. It was a little sweet for me. And I'm not a big sherry fan as a general rule. My mom used to like sherry a lot. I mean, I think that was the drink du jour for the ladies of the 50s and 60s, right? You had your mom would cook with sherry, and then she would drink half the bottle as she was cooking. But in any event, it's a lovely drink to have in the evening.
And I like the way that you're doing all this hard work for us, so we don't have to. I mean, who puts that combination together? That's amazing.
Yeah, I heard about it. It wasn't like I made it all up. I heard about this combo, and I went, well, I gotta try that. So I tried it, and it was good. Like I said, it's good.
We still need that book on cocktails from you. I think that is definitely got to be part of your content.
The world
strategy.
needs a lot from me, my friend, and I'm not sure I'm the one to deliver it. Let's just put it that way.
I love that. And where would be drinking such a crazy bunch of cocktails?
I think we're going to head to anything this weird and this sort of odd combination. I think we need to go to Vegas.
Yes.
So this is the perfect kind of Las Vegas drink that you have in a fancy bar before you head down to the casino and basically lose all your money. But ostensibly, someplace where we can sit, watch the skylights, see the basically what's going on in Las Vegas, and enjoy these weird sort of strange Vixen drink.
I bet there's somewhere in Vegas you can get a Vegas Vixen.
I bet there is. Oh, well, it's in lots of different iterations, by the way, of what you just said. Yes, indeed.
We just watched the Elvis movie a couple of weeks ago. I say movie, it lasts about a fortnight, doesn't it? It goes on and on. But yes, we just watched that. So there's a little bit of Vegas going on in my head anyway.
Is it any good?
It got mixed reviews in our house.
Okay.
But it's it's very nicely shot, I think, and they tell the story from the Colonel's perspective, which is really interesting. And Tom Hanks plays that character, and there's a lot of good in it. I just feel it was a bit long, a bit baggy,
a little overwrought. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like they were having too much. Having too much fun with themselves and forgot all about the fact they were making a movie. But
that's right. That's supposed to tell a story, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear what other people's opinion of it. But what I was saying to my wife and daughter was, it felt like it needed an edit. A really good edit to make it into art. That's what I thought. So
yeah.
That was my view. But absolutely worth watching, especially if you like a bit of Elvis. And obviously, there's the man's, there's multiple elements to that chap, isn't there? And it tells a particular side of that story. So yeah. Because we had to watch Priscilla the week before, so it's all Elvis in our house.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, all right then.
We've got all angles going on here. All right, mate. So we're in Vegas. We're drinking these Vegas Vixens, and we're telling stories about Elvis. But the conversation turns to marketing. What are we talking about this week, mate?
Well, let's talk a little bit about search, because if there was anything that made the news this week, it was about search and the Google papers, as they're coming to be known. So for those in the audience who didn't follow, basically this week on Tuesday, it came out that there were some leaked Google papers, about 2,000 pages worth of internal documents at Google that apparently, so Rand Fishkin, formerly of Moz and then now of SparkToro, was the one who sort of broke this story, if you will, because he got from someone who claimed that these basically demonstrated a number of things, the secret ingredients of how Google search works, and has proven, quote unquote, that Google has been, another quote, lying about how to optimize our content for Google search. And so I thought it would be an interesting thing to talk about search generally speaking, because my takeaway from all the coverage, and by the way, we're 4 days into this, so I'm sure it will evolve even as we speak. Was that this was, the metaphor that I've been using is, this might be the recipe for Coca-Cola, the secret ingredients for Coca-Cola, but without the amounts, you certainly can't duplicate it, right? You can't duplicate Coca-Cola. And it's probably the recipe for New Coke, the thing that they don't even do anymore, right? That wasn't as tasty. So there's probably not a lot of there or usefulness in sort of these insights, other than the one thing that really took me by surprise, and I don't even know if you knew this. I certainly didn't. Did you know that Google utilizes what they call quality raters, like human beings? They have a whole network of these people. You did know this. Okay.
No, I did not know this. That was because I've been away for a lot this week, but I did pick up on the Rand Fishkin post, and I was I looked through it. I want to read it. I've skimmed it, but that popped out. And I thought, what, there's people?
Well, there's a whole network of people who are these quality raters who actually go through Google searches and click on the links and look at the content and then rate that content. And apparently, according to these documents, according to the claims made here, Google uses those ratings in order to rank for search. Now, put that into a checkbox just for a second. The second thing that came out in the analysis that I think is where people are burying the lead is that they employ safe lists, right? So that Google actually has site safe lists for sensitive topics like COVID-19 and for elections and for travel. And so they're manually editorializing results. So put those two things together. They're using human editors to rate the quality of content, and they're using human editorializing to create these safe lists. That flies in the face of Google saying that they're not a media company, right? That they're not, that they're just a platform, and that they, that everything is equal and it's all based on the algorithm. I think this, if there is a story here, I think this is the only sort of story that's there. But, here's the thing. It brings up a lot of questions about search, generally speaking. Like, as search evolves into this AI-oriented answer first, zero click thing, where do we all go here as marketers when it comes to search? Because I know a lot of marketers out there right now are struggling with this question, like, what is next for search engine optimization? It's the question I'm getting most frequently now when it comes to optimizing content is, how do we even start thinking about site search or search, generally speaking, when it comes to Gemini or Bing or anything like that? Literally a Perplexity, providing the answers right within the the actual search results itself. So it's a fascinating topic.
I think, and I was chatting to a CMO that I do some advisory for as well, and he's struggling with this. And in fact, he's actually doing some research into this so that then he can talk about it with his team and really sort of get this figured out for himself. And I think some of the interesting thing about this is, you and I have chatted about voice in the past, haven't we? Where we've said, if you ask if you ask Alexa for a new pair of sneakers, it's not gonna give you 1,000 pages, 10 results at a time that you can choose. There isn't the bandwidth with that in voice, because it's going to try and give you the answer. And this is similar to that, isn't it? Do you think this means that that brands are going to come back as being the strength that we need? So we need people to search for us by name, not just search for our product or category. Because it's going to be incredibly difficult to be in that top box which says, this is the solution for you to this problem.
Well, I think it provides, there's a few articles that have been written on this, this exact issue, right? Which is, there are two use cases, more than two probably, but two primary use cases for the search that you just mentioned, right? Which is, I'm looking for, I'm looking for the best Mexican restaurant near me, right?
Yeah.
And in that case, the answer I want is probably not the best restaurant, right? In other words, I don't want the algorithm or Google or anybody basically to tell me. I want to select, right?
Exactly,
so what we're usually looking for is a list, right? So we want which is why when you search that, you're going to get all those articles from, Yelp and all those things, which are the top rated X restaurants in this area where you happen to be, using your location data in order to provide that. And so that's what I want. I don't want it to give me the best answer. Now, here's the thing. It could be that the use case is rather, make me a reservation at the best Mexican restaurant that's available on Monday night at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And so there, I don't want a list. I just want the easiest selection, because in that case, my priority isn't the best restaurant. It's the best restaurant that's also open at 6 p.m. and available on a Monday night. And so that's where AI could really provide a value. The other thing is, when you're just looking for an answer, and this is how my wife, I notice, I just watch her, how she uses it. Google search versus ChatGPT is her favorite tool. And which is, if she wants an answer, tell me what the right dosage is of vitamin C in the morning.
Yeah.
She doesn't want a list of WebMD versus this versus that versus this, giving her opinions. She just wants the answer. She just wants to quickly get the answer of what the right dosage of vitamin C is in the morning. So those are the two different primary use cases. And I think it's going to be a really tricky thing for Google and Microsoft and Amazon, ultimately, when they add this to the product search, and Apple, when they add this to Siri, et cetera. It's going to be a really tricky thing for them to navigate, because, whether they go to a subscription model or whether they go to some sort of, personal assistant model, which seems to be where OpenAI is going, right, with this personal assistant sort of stuff. I think it's a really tricky thing to navigate from a marketing point of view. Like, how do you become the top answer for that AI related question, and how do you remain for the rest, right? For the other kind of search.
Yeah. So a bunch of things I'm thinking about from what you said there. Now, on that final point, which I think is fascinating, is I've always assumed that because this is this big cash cow for Google, they'll figure out a way of taking money from marketers in order to get top of the list and be preference. So I've always assumed that somehow there'll be a way of buying a ticket to the lottery there, right? For us marketers, because if they're going to give the instant answer and nobody's going to click into anything, then there's no point in me buying those keywords, right? So I've always assumed that they were going to figure that out, but I can't see how they're doing it right now, because ChatGPT won't be able to do it, right? So the more AI that gets into this, the more single answers we get, the less opportunity there will be for paid.
Well, I've been toying with a couple of different possibilities here in thinking about this. One of which is, just exactly to your point, the one place where you can really see them disintermediating companies that are already doing this are all those sites that are doing affiliate marketing, right?
Yeah.
where they, there's the classic is, you want to go buy a new washing machine, or you want to go buy a new car.
Yeah.
And so you do searches, and what usually comes up is, carreviews.com, right? And so, and by the way, I don't know if that's a real site. I just made that up. I'm not pitching for it or anything. If it is a real view, if it is a real site. So you go there, and it'll tell you what's the right, what's the best car, with reviews and all sorts of things. And you can select, by, I want a convertible and blah, 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 blah. And you do your thing, and then it gives you a list. And most of those, if you click through, are going to be some sort of affiliate link off to whatever it is, right? So you could see immediately how Google could disintermediate that and basically make all those sites irrelevant now, right? Because they can spider all that, they can get all that content, they can process it through AI, and they could provide the exact thing that the answer you're looking for. Here's a review, basically. Here's a review of the top 10 cars that are convertibles, blah, 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 right there in the search results page, and away you go. And they could charge either a link to people, to the themselves, and so get into the affiliate business, basically.
Yeah.
Or they could charge the user. Basically, that's a service that you now get with Google, and you could charge them $1 or $2 a month to do something like that, and then basically monetize it that way. Or you could do like what they do with sort of an ad buy, and you could say, if you want to be part of this, if you want our learning model to spider your content, give us access to it, right? And so it wouldn't be a guarantee, but it would basically be, sort of a, you could pay to be part of the answer, which provides weird trust issues and blah, blah, blah. And we, all those kinds of things. The interesting thing to me is that there probably is, so you can see all of the the search companies and AI companies. So OpenAI making all these deals with like The Atlantic and like Fox. And Google hasn't started this yet. And, at some point they'll make a deal with the New York Times. So thinking about companies that have deep repositories of content that these companies want to be part of their learning model. Yeah. Well, if you extrapolate that out and you go, okay, well, let's look 2 or 3 steps in the checkerboard down the road, you could go, well, there's a lot of businesses that have deep corpuses of very specialized knowledge that they could either license to an OpenAI or to a Google exclusively, and say, listen, I'm Cleveland Clinic, right? Yeah. And I'm going to license my 40,000 articles on healthcare that have all been vetted by healthcare professionals and that have been, carefully selected and curated over the course of the last 10 years. And that's a special corpus of content that I'm going to make available to the learning model of OpenAI for an exclusive rate of X. And they become the answer for healthcare related questions, right?
Yeah.
You can any topic you can think of would be open market for that, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know where it's going, but it strikes me that if there's a company out there that is really good at rain gutters, for example, well, maybe they have a deep repository of content about the best rain gutters, about how to do rain gutters, about everything about rain gutters. And they could go to OpenAI or to Google and say, hey, listen, I'm going to sign up for your quote unquote LLM account, I'm making all this up, and I'm going to sign an exclusive deal with Google. Now, how does the money change hands? Do I pay for that privilege? Or do I not pay for that privilege? Do they pay me for that privilege? That level of exclusivity and that level of idea. I think that's where the Wild West of this thing is really going to come to pass.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I also think that the 2 use cases you talk about, the interesting thing is where there's an answer that's a very specific answer that you can get in multiple places, but it's the same answer. Like, how much vitamin C do we need in a day? That's probably a very specific answer that comes out. But whenever you said best, there, like, where's the best Mexican restaurant and what's the best Mexican restaurant, and book it for me for 6 o'clock on Monday, your definition of best may be very different from my definition of best, and that's where we want the choice, right? And that's
exactly
gonna be the tricky bit.
And I think that's the use case for so you can immediately see where that provides an advantage to somebody like Apple, right? Where if Apple makes a deal with OpenAI to say we're going to combine the data and knowledge that we have on individual iPhone holders with your ability to provide, a personal assistant, that's 10x better than SIRI, just so that I don't kick anybody's thing off. And basically, how do you, so in other words, Apple knows what my best is, right? Apple knows what my favorite kinds of things are, and it can look at that data and say, oh, okay, based on Robert's preferences, here it is to OpenAI, and then basically the choices can come out of that.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Yeah, what a great answer to my question, which is that, of course, these algorithms will know what our best is. They'll know what our behavior is, and we'll be frustrated if they didn't, because we give them so much data. I think that's perfect. Okay, so if people are looking for content that was not written by the algorithm but is actually perfect for their needs, where might they find that?
They can find that on my website, which is contentadvisory.net.
Splendid. And when people spin the dial on the internet, where are they going to find you, mate?
I'll be on LinkedIn for hanging out. That's where I'm spending most of my time. Although, if you want, I'm enjoying the meme and funny pun filled threads of late. It's been really fun.
Fantastic. All right, mate. I'll see you over there, and will I see you in the bar next week?
Of course you will. Yes.
I look forward to it, mate. I'll see you then. Cheers. Thank you, Robert. A fascinating topic, and we chatted a little bit more after the recording finished, and I would encourage you to follow Robert's work there as that topic unfolds. So that's a wrap on episode 220 of the Rockstar CMO Effing Marketing Podcast. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and you can find links to me, Jeff, and Robert, along with all the things we discussed in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, along with our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. And thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I would love to hear from you, so please say hello or drop us a rating or review in your favourite podcast app, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Jeff and I are planning to get back to basics with a chat about metrics, and Robert will be back in the virtual bar with a cocktail and his weekly marketing thought. Until then, have a great week, and I hope you can join us here next week on Rockstar CMO FM.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.